Okay, so we are ready to start drawing our cowboy. And like I said, it's a cowboy or a cowgirl. So we're going to start in the middle of our paper. I am basically following along with this sheet here. And you can find this in Mrs. Hoover's drawing guide on the website. So I'm going to start in the middle of my paper. Now I'm just using a Sharpie marker. I want you to use a pencil, but I'm using a Sharpie so that you can see it more easily. But if you use a pencil, then you can erase it. Okay, so I'm going to start in the middle of my paper, and I'm just going to draw kind of a U shape. Like I said, this can be either a guy or a girl. If you want to have a real funny chin, you can make the chin more pointy or more squared off. That's up to you. I'm just doing a general simple drawing. And we're going to give our cowboy, cowgirl some ears. If you're drawing a girl, these ears might be eventually covered up with hair if that's the hairstyle, but we can do that later. And then a little line inside for the ears. All right, so now I'm going to give my cowboy a hat. I'm always just going to call this a cowboy. Whether you're making a cowgirl or a cowboy, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to give my cowgirl, cowboy a hat. You don't have to have a hat for your cowboy. If you just want to have their hair just regular or maybe a different style, that's fine, or maybe real messy. But I'm going to show you how to do a hat. So I'm going to start in the middle of the ears and curve around like that. Make a little curve. And then curve down like this. And then curve around like that. So you can see this is the brim of the hat. And you can tell right here that on either side of the face it doesn't touch. So I'm going to extend it on up into the hat to touch. So that's the brim of their hat. And I'm going to go ahead and put their neck in. Now a lot of times students will make the neck real skinny. And we actually have necks that are pretty big. If you'll notice on maybe your neck or the person's across, their neck starts right about at their jawline. And because we have big heads, so we need a big neck. So we're going to start our neck right about here, coming down on either side. All right, I'm going to move my projector a little bit. That's better. Okay, so now we're going on to making the rest of my cowboy's hat. So I'm going to make the top of the hat, and you can see I want to start on the outside of the face because the hat is actually sitting on the head. If you start inside like that, it's like that's weird because their head doesn't start over here, it starts over here. So make sure you're starting on the outside of the head, and I'm just going to draw a hat like a typical cowboy hat that kind of dips down. You could make your hat be flat across the top or rounded or straight, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do kind of a typical one that sort of has a little dent at the top. So there's my little cowboy hat. Like I said, you can do a different one or you can leave the hat off. And then I'm going to put a little band across it like that. So my cowboy's wearing the hat. So this cowboy, I'm going to make a bandana that he's tied around his neck. If you want to do your outlaw to where he has a bandana over his face, I can show you that at the end. But right now we're going to do this where the bandana is around his neck. So I'm going to start here right at the base of his neck and do a little curve like that. And then I'm going to go all the way across and curve around to the other side. So it's starting to look like his neck's going down into that shape. And then if you can see his neck doesn't quite touch, again, I'm going to extend it down to touch on that side and down to touch on this side. So this is the top of the bandana and it's laying over to one side of his shoulder. So I'm going to draw the bandana, just part of his shoulder, starting right at the top of that curve and just make a curved line like it's his shoulder. So there's one side of the bandana. And then it's going to curve down, kind of goes down and then comes back up to the other side of the bandana right there. And then I draw a little knot. That's where it's tied around his neck. And then I'm going to draw in a little tie. Something kind of sort of like that. Almost looks like a leaf. Need to scoot this up a little bit so you can see. I think I'll zoom out a little bit. Well, that didn't zoom out. I'm going to just move it up like that. So, now on this bandana, if you take a couple of lines, kind of from this little knot, it makes it look like the folds on the fabric. And the same thing with this tie. If you just draw a little line, kind of swish it down like that, it makes it look like the little tie has a little fold in it. So I've got this part of his shoulder over here. I'm just going to continue down off the bottom of the page. So make sure you have your cowboy going off, your outlaw going off the bottom of the page, not just floating up in the middle of your paper. Extend it all the way down. And the same over here. I'm going to match what I did, the slope on this side to the other side, curve down, and then go off the bottom of the paper. You might see a little bit of his arm. Depends on how wide you made him. All right, so he's looking good. He's got the basics. Now we're going to work on his face. So we're going to draw the outlaw's eyes. And when you're drawing eyes, you'll notice our eyes are almond shaped. So if you look at the person sitting across from you, or you look in a mirror, if you're by yourself, you can see your eyes are almond shaped. They're not like round circles. So I'm going to draw, and also when you look at your eyes, when you look at them, you can have this shape like the width of one eye in between two eyes. So if you look at your neighbor, if you were to take the width of their eye and put it in between the two eyes, that's how far apart you draw the eyes. Sometimes it's hard to know how to space things out, but we have the width of our eyes between our two eyes. So I'm going to space them out kind of like that. They're also right across from our ears. If you'll notice in a mirror or looking at somebody, your eyes line up with your ears. Sometimes students make their eyes way up on their forehead because they can't really believe that their eyes are right in the middle of their head. So we're going to put our eyes right here across from our ears, and we're going to make them almond shape. So here's a curve this way and a curve this way. So it's not a circle. So now we have to decide if your outlaw is going to look sinister, or is he going to have a pleasant expression? Is he just like angry, or kind of evil looking, or is he a nice outlaw? So that kind of will determine what you're going to do with the next line, which is the eyelid. If he's kind of squinting, it'll make him look a little bit more angry. So you might make his eyelid kind of coming down a little bit on his eyes like that, if you want him to look that way. If you want him to look a little friendlier, I'll draw an eye up here. You would draw the eyelid above because his eyes aren't quite so closed. But let's talk about the next part, which is an important part, which is the iris. The iris is the colorful part in your eye, not the very center, which is the pupil, which is black, but the colorful part is the iris. Now when you look in the mirror or you look at your neighbor, look at the iris. Can you see the entire circle all the way around their eye? Not unless they have their eyes open all the way. If they have their eyes open all the way, they might look a little bit crazy, because none of us really walks around with our eyes open all this way. So you'll notice the eyelid kind of cuts off the iris a little bit, so we're going to draw it that way. So we're going to draw not all of the circle, just part of the circle for the iris. And then inside the iris is the, what part is that? That's the pupil, right. So we're going to do the pupil, but I'm going to draw up here a little bit so you can see. But the pupil has one more little tiny detail in the center. Do you notice in the mirror or at your neighbor if you see a little white dot? That is the reflection of the light. And since our eyes are wet, they reflect light. So we need to add that. That will make your drawing, anytime you do a drawing of an eye, if you'll make a reflection of white, it makes the eye look so much more realistic. So I'm going to draw another circle inside the pupil, and I'm going to leave it white. See how that makes it look instantly more realistic? Same with this guy. I'm going to leave the center white. Now, so we've got him drawn in. This would be one thing that at this point you would do something differently if you're making a girl. If you're making a girl, you could put in the eyelashes. Now, of course, boys and girls both have eyelashes, so it's not like it would be wrong for you to put in eyelashes. However, we're doing a really simplified drawing, and in doing a really simplified drawing, we kind of don't put in every single detail. If you were doing a drawing with a pencil and you just had it so realistic looking, lots of shading, lots of detail, you could put in the eyelashes, because you'd have a lot of other details to make it look like a boy. But if you're just making a simple drawing like we're doing, I would suggest you not put in the eyelashes if you're drawing a boy, because it has a tendency to make it look a little bit more like a girl. So I will show you up on this eye. This would be my girl eye. And this would be like on this side of the face, like the nose would be here. And you would start at the eye and you do some curved lines out. Not very many. You don't need very many. But you can see it kind of makes it look a little bit more feminine just with the eyelashes. So now with this cowboy, cowgirl, either one, we need that special detail above the eye. And what is that?
Eyebrows.
Eyebrows. So eyebrows, you can make them thick or thin, depends on what you've got. You can make eyebrows like your eyebrows, or you can make up eyebrows. So I'm just going to make some eyebrows that are fairly bushy, because I'm going to pretend like this guy just doesn't ever do anything to take care of himself. And maybe he needs to pluck those eyebrows, but he's a mess. So eyebrows they grow like little hairs, and they grow in slanted across the face. So I'm going to draw some little eyebrow hairs across his face.